So a couple years ago, this total stranger named Peter Sillen from New York called us up. Turned out to be a really nice guy, and he said, I'm going to be in California in a couple months. I'd like to make a film about your company. And we said, no strings? He said, no strings. So we said, yes. And we made a beautiful film. So we're going to kick things off with a short film. They're still using typewriters, so how backwards, it's more like, this is really pure. And how do we retain that sort of purity and still kind of bring things into modern times? In California, people have a connection to the land, the geography and just the feel of the place.
Heath is a California company. I was always interested in the manufacturing of the products that I was designing, but you never really could connect that, the making and the designing, very close together when everything was being manufactured overseas.
I tried to approach it from sort of a step-by-step flow of how I thought somebody could achieve a pattern organically.
It's pretty cool.
I love this. Is using four things.
One of the first things we did is started working with a publicist to get the story out, because Heath had this wonderful story.
Edith Heath started Heath Ceramics in 1947. She did not want to just take her designs and throw them somewhere and have them mass produced, but she thought that they could be produced on a greater scale with a lot of integrity and a lot of craft. She decided she wanted to use molds. And
that's a really nice way to, a really nice.
And I think
really,
that the storytelling in that was much better than we could do,
yeah.
But it was really nice to have someone make that movie who just got it. Like, he got Heath just like that.
They did. And a lovely way to end it with Annie jumping up and down and smiling like she always does when you go in the factory. One takeaway you shouldn't get from that film: if you have really cool junk in your yard, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to buy your place. So I didn't notice that until I watched it again. I think it gives a nice picture of what we do if you're unfamiliar with Heath, and really kind of makes it tangible what the company does and the people there. What the film doesn't tell you is a little bit more about us and what our background is and where we came from and how we ended up doing what we do. Kathy and I both have a background as product designers, and we used to spend a lot of time working together, working separately, doing design work for a lot of big corporations, a lot of Silicon Valley tech startups, and kind of before the year 2000. And then we started to realize more and more that the design work we were doing had nothing to do with the reason we got interested in design in the first place. And we got interested in design because we liked the idea of making something, about having an idea and realizing it and taking that idea from beginning to end and having that end result be something that you were proud of because you envisioned it to work out this way and you had the time to do that. And a lot of the reason for that, I think, was the whole manufacturing component has sort of gone, and that wasn't really part of the design process anymore because that manufacturing was so far away. And then just the nature of that sort of design work as well. Rather than the making, it was creating presentations and creating more and more presentations, and presentations that didn't go anywhere. And we have a lot of presentations stacked up in CDs somewhere, and I don't even know why I keep them, but that was kind of what I had to show for 8 years of work. And what we really wanted to do was tie this whole process of designing, making, and selling and telling the story of that product together in one thoughtful, holistic chain so that the end result really made sense, and we're creating something that was intentional, and that was lasting, and that was good. And so about 10 years ago, it was time for us to make that change and make that happen. So this is our house, and our house is about a 15-minute walk away from the factory in Sausalito, California. And our house and our business have these parallels. When we found them both, they didn't look so good and needed a lot of work. And so we've kind of got these parallel rebuilding projects that we've been doing constantly over the past 10 years, our house, our business, I guess our lives in some way. And we really like to build things. We like to make things. We like to make beautiful things. We like to create environments that feel good and generate good experiences. And that's a lot of what this house is about. It's a lot of what Heath is about, with a whole lot of other aspects. And it's something that we just do. It's just it's constant. We can't help ourselves. It's what we love to do.
I think it's a lot about with the parallel is also these two things were worth saving. They weren't something that should be forgotten. I mean, this house was kind of a shack, and now it's our home, and it's really wonderful.
1880s shack?
Some years on it, yeah.
Yeah,
Older than
1880s
you.
shack. So this picture was taken in, I think, the fall of 2003, a couple of months after we started our new jobs. And, we had just left our old careers as consultants, and we bought a 60-year-old pottery. And we'd left behind the world of conference rooms and Polycom phones and PowerPoint presentations and more PowerPoint presentations. And we found ourselves on the dusty factory floor with broken machinery and the hum of all sorts of other activity going on. And it just made us really happy. It was kind of a change. And that was 10 years ago.
Another important part of the story is the Heaths. So the Heaths were Edith and Brian Heath, and they founded this company in 1947. And they came to California. Edith had a real love of ceramics and clay. She had a Bauhaus background, which gave form to some really beautiful, simple shapes that are pretty timeless, which is what we thought when we saw them for the first time. And they were, we thought, so timeless that that really was the foundation of the company, even though it didn't really look that way in 2003. But this is the factory, 1959 factory the Heaths built, and it's where we make all our dinnerware today. It still looks pretty much like that, a little bit more worn, but Heath was a wonderful part of the community. It became iconic company. It was, it made its mark in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. But in the 80s, it was things had changed, and into the 90s, things changed even more. So it wasn't thriving like it had been.
So in 2003, we became the second owners of Heath Ceramics after the Heaths' almost 60-year run of starting this business in the 40s. Quite a long period of time and quite something to follow up on. What we found, though, was not a company in its golden years anymore. We actually found a company that was literally underwater, and it suffered from flooding all the time, and the roof leaked, and things were broken, and it hadn't made a profit in about 15 years, and of course you have to make a profit in order to keep something going. So a little bit scary, but we were undaunted because we had water rescue dogs to keep us safe. And also when the factory flooded, they would run around in the water and splash around, and it just kind of kept it all in perspective. This is still fun and good memories of kind of pulling on the rubber boots and getting dirty and sandbagging with your employees.
I think at the end of those days, there was nothing more satisfying. You're like, we stopped the flood. It was like good days of
Either
work.
the water's coming in or it's not. You got something done. So at the same time with all this, we knew that the company had been making these wonderful shapes, these kind of beautiful shapes in pottery that had been around for decades, and they were lasting, and they had this integrity. So those are the good bones. There was something there to really build on. And it also had a lot of wonderful people. And we started out with about 24 people. A lot of them had already worked there for maybe more than 30 years already. Some of them worked there starting out in high school. And they had a lot of pride in what they did. And they knew how to use all the machinery. They knew how to make all the pieces. They had history. And they really cared about what they did, and their work made them happy.
Okay, so a little bit about the product that we built around and why it's special. So the thing that's really cool about Heath is that everything is made there. Like the clay is made there. We make the glazes. And this allows us to really, create everything, every part of it. It's really super holistic and it's unique, which means we don't really compete with many other companies too directly. It's also a little bit crazy because it's hard to do, and there's
It's
some
for a lot of
downsides.
work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not easy. But, so we can work with new techniques. Our designs aren't coming off of a sketch usually. It comes from really kind of getting in there and just making it. And we do new shapes, and we expose the clay, and we design the glazes. So we just by being able to kind of get in there and feel it and feel the materials, it makes it really satisfying and kind of simple work in some ways. One other thing that I wanted to do is really work with other people who inspire me, and see what comes of that, see if we can make even better work together. But I have a friend, Natalie Channon, who I've always admired her company because what she's done is she has a great aesthetic, and she's taken to hand stitching clothing, but it's really a strong part of her community. It's kind of like she's working with cultural preservation and design together to kind of make these beautiful garments. And so when I thought, and she, I was surprised that she wanted to do something and I wanted to do something, and I thought, okay, but this is hard. Like, how do I honor the kind of work that she does with the kind of work that we do? It takes a lot less time to make a plate than it does a dress. And it took a long time to figure it out. Now it seems completely obvious, but what we decided to do is we'd etch in patterns into the plate by hand. So we layer the glaze, and then we design this pattern and we etch it, and it takes a very long time, and it's a lot like stitching a garment. Each piece is unique.
So we
There's
figured
no
out how to
templates.
take longer to make things.
Exactly. But it was right because,
logical.
that's the kind of work and the thought and the time that goes into her garments, and the plate needed to be that. So that's what it looks like in the end. And we tried a lot of silly, faster things in the beginning, and this was what felt right. So I like taking that time and making something really beautiful in the end, and luckily there's enough people who seem to like it too, so we can keep doing it.
So we had this business, 10 years ago that was an old-fashioned manufacturing business that didn't really work. And back then nobody was talking about bringing manufacturing back to this country. Nobody was talking about local manufacturing and creating manufacturing jobs. And so for us it was a little bit of going against the stream. And at the time, I remember talking to you when I first bought the business. I was talking to a business advisor. I was talking to all sorts of people, just kind of getting ideas. How are we going to make this happen? And this is a guy that I still talk to him. He just bought all new dinnerware for his home in New York. We just shipped it out 2 weeks ago. But I remember this conversation I had with him where he said to me, "I don't think you're going to be able to keep on making every product here in California. I think in order to make this work, you're going to have to outsource some cheaper product and blend that in to make things work." And I listened, but ultimately, for us, that wasn't interesting. That's not creative. It's not interesting. It wasn't what we wanted to do. It wasn't what we felt was right in terms of the designing and making better product. So we really put the stake in the ground of we are going to make everything here, and we're going to keep on doing that, and that's the goal that's what we're going to figure out. Start at that starting point. And I think it feels good. Now, of course, there's a lot of talk about bringing manufacturing back, and there's a lot of people making things, and a lot of them are here today, and it feels right. There's a lot of this going on. At the time, there wasn't. And while we don't like to look at kind of numbers and sort of feeling our success, we did start out with 24 employees at the time. Now we've got about 130, and so they're not all manufacturing jobs, but a lot of them are. And it does feel good that we have continued to make every single piece in California, and created all these kind of manufacturing jobs along with it, and done so in a way where everybody actually still gets paid more, and they still get their health care. And I think we also make better products at the same time. And the integrity is even stronger than that. And that all makes us feel pretty good. And sort of making this change of figuring out how do you get an old manufacturing business to work, in this day and age in California. The first thing was to really tell the story. You know, Heath had this wonderful story, and it was about teaching people, our customers and the public, about how do you make things? Where does the integrity come from? Who are the people that make these things who live in your community? And also about the importance of designing and making and the integrity that produces in products. So it's really about an education, because a lot of people really didn't know how things were made anymore. And so in our latest project in San Francisco, you know, instead of just telling that story, we decided to just kind of bring that story to where people were. You know, instead of telling the story about a factory in California where you make things, we decided to build a factory right in the heart of San Francisco. So you almost couldn't ignore it. You know, it's like, here's this factory right there in the middle of the city. You can't help know what's going on there and understand sort of the transparency of what's happening in there. We also do all of our own retail, so we sell everything through our own retail showrooms. And that's a big part of kind of making it work of a different sort of a model. You know, old manufacturing was you make it and then you sell it through a reseller. Well, that kind of didn't really make enough money to make it work. So that was our kind of big change of this sort of we make it and it goes direct to the customer. And in our factory in Sausalito, it's actually about 40 feet from where the kiln is to where the store is. So it's a really, really short run. Comes out of the kiln, goes in a cart, pushes out to the store, goes home with you. And that's a whole different story from putting it on a container, it rides on a train and a truck and then a boat and another train and a truck and all this packaging. So it's quite different. The other thing about having our own retail showrooms is that we're able to tell that whole story. So we're really able to communicate what it is we do in such a strong way because we create that environment. And part of the way we also create that environment is we have this adjacency with our retail and our manufacturing. Every one of our showrooms has some element of making attached to it. You know, in Sausalito, it's that original factory. In LA, it's a pottery studio that's part of that showroom. In San Francisco, we've gone an extra step, and we've actually wrapped the showroom around the factory with these huge clear glass walls. So on one side, you're in the showroom looking in the factory, and what I love about it is for our guys working in the factory, they're on the other side, and they're looking back at the store, the people that appreciate what they do. And making that connection with people and teaching them about this craft and the pride that people have in it is really important. Is really important to us. So.
Okay, so we have. We're going to try something a little different now because we work together and we're always like in it and really close to what we're doing. And we thought, okay, what if we ask each other some questions that we don't normally ask each other in front of you guys and see what happens. Or fall my chair. But yeah. So do you want to try it?
Yeah. You want to do it? You have cold feet? Sure. You want me to go first?
You go
Okay.
first.
So we set up these stools really close to each other. And then the Q&A part happens. Okay, so my first question for you is you know, we did sort of, you know, you went into, you had this consultancy and you went in one day and you told your partners, I'm quitting, you can have the consultancy, I just bought a pottery. And at the time, I think they looked at you kind of funny and thought, what is she thinking? So my question for you is, what were you thinking? Like, why did you think this was going to work? Like, how confident were you? Or were you just making me, Robin, go do this, get it done, and hoping I could figure it out?
Okay, so that's a good question.
Yeah.
So I think, was I confident? I think at the time, you know, it didn't really matter because I wasn't fulfilled with what I was doing. I didn't feel like it was leading me anywhere where I was going to be fulfilled. So it was like, there's nothing to lose when you feel that way. And so it was a great time to do that. It wasn't, and it was like, well, what if it doesn't happen? Am I going to be any worse off than I am now? And plus, it was like everything else we did was kind of, it was kind of good training for it, I think. And for us just, you know, you have a consultancy and you have to go out and you have to like convince people that that they should pay you to do work for them. And that's like really hard. And now I'm like, okay, I have to just make nice plates and sell them. Like, that seemed
So it's kind of the
easier.
same thing.
It seemed
Or
easier. It seemed easier. And it
it's also-
seemed just,
I
whatever.
also remember
It was-
having these conversations where it was like, okay, so we go out and we try this thing and it doesn't work, and then we don't have a job anymore. We have to find another living, right? And then we kind of had this epiphany of like, well, you could go get a job and then somebody could lay you off the next day. You have no control over that. So what's the difference? I mean, this is actually better because you know what's going to happen next week or the month, and otherwise, I mean, it can happen in any situation. There's no security, and I guess we'd rather be in control of our own.
Yeah, and the
Destiny,
reality
right?
was there's no way we were going to continue doing that other job. We needed to do something, and it was going to be something, and this was there, and it seemed like it had good bones, so, no risk.
Okay, surprise question though. Would you have done it without me?
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
No,
Unfair, totally unfair. I
I can-
sprung that on her.
Yeah, I can answer that though. I think I would have liked to, but I think it was, for me, it was combined angles and expertise that we had that got it done, because I didn't write that business plan. I mean, I kind of helped, but would I have jumped in and written that business plan? I mean, that wasn't really what I was good at. I was good at the other part of it, but I knew exactly what the company needed. I knew how to tell the story and how to do that. So I might have found someone else who wanted to do it, or I don't know, hired someone to do that part of it. But that's different. Didn't seem like it was my job singularly.
I still remember the lawyer from the trust. I gave him the business plan and with the offer, and he said, I remember him saying that my numbers lack substance. You just got to put something down. It
Yeah,
just
you
doesn't
just
really
gotta do
matter,
it.
right? So, okay, so what's your question for me? Your first question
All
for me.
right.
Hopefully we can get through. Okay, perfect. 5.
5 minutes. Okay,
Perfect.
so.
We can do this.
All right, so is there a moment when you started thinking, okay, now I'm doing work where nothing is missing, or, I really think this is worthwhile?
So I think I had a lot of, especially in the beginning, I had a lot of moments like that, right? Because it was a very different sort of experience of going to work. And you kind of take, when you switch jobs, you kind of take what you know and you try to apply it. So I remember at the beginning starting to say, okay, I really need to figure out what goes on here and everything that happens in the making of pottery and this whole thing. So I'm going to start going, and this is, of course, before we had, we have a 7-year-old son, so this is before babies and just big dogs. They follow you all times of the day. And so I started going to work at 6 a.m. every morning, so I could be there when the kiln's open, when the crew shows up, and see everything that happens. And those were really great times because I was there, like when he was saying, you open the kiln and it's Christmas every day, you don't know what's going to come out, and there's that physical warmth at the kiln, and that feeling that you guys in the teepees had this morning. So when you came for your first cup of coffee and you came together, it's kind of that thing. But but I found out a lot of other things, not just the process of like what happens, but I also found out that I was working with this group of people that were totally a different part of society than I was used to working, right? I was used to working with everybody in one room who felt like they all went to grad school with me and wore khaki pants and Oxford shirts, because that's what you wear in the Valley, right? And it was like that. And here I was working with a whole group of people that came from all different segments of society and different cultures, with different languages, had different concerns, different economies at home, and we were all working together. And that felt really good to sort of learn about how, what's important to people with a different background from you. And
That's a
to
good
be able to
answer.
apply that into the decisions that I make.
Yeah, I remember that feeling too. So that's a good answer. It was like you were like, oh, it's the people, like right, and it
And
was
it's
like
a different way of making decisions after that.
yeah. You know what? That I remember thinking, okay, so here we're working with all these different kinds of people, and we're really working together to try to do this. And in my other work, I felt there was just this I really had a problem with this things that I was making, and then the people who were making it, which didn't even speak the same language as I did, they didn't know. I couldn't talk to them, and they didn't even know what they were making, and so their job, I don't think, was very fulfilling to them. I didn't see that kind of smiles coming off, the
So
assembly
jumping
line.
up and down from the trimming station.
No, but the sea of sewing machines, in the Indonesia factory, it just didn't really feel like that was really good work
Okay.
in the way that this feels.
Ready for the next question?
Sure.
I have a question for you. Okay, so the next question is, you were doing a lot of design work before, but it didn't have that, like you were saying, it didn't have that manufacturing element and that proximity. So since you've been designing at Heath and been the creative director, what have you learned about design? How has your notion of design changed? How has that affected it?
Okay, so I can answer that. So personally, I think what's different and what changed for me is I kind of was taught design, and there was this kind of, it was like a trade, there's like a skill of going through this design process. And that was what I thought I would do and be satisfied by. But then now I don't, that's just not enough. That's just not okay anymore to kind of be siloed
narrow?
in that way. It needs to be holistic for me, and the fact that now I feel satisfied by design because it's the holistic process from understanding that the people making it, I know them, I can understand them, I know that they're kind of well treated and happy, and to that I know kind of the impact of the products that I design that it has. I can find out all those things and connect all those dots, and it feels like that's, for me, design. That's
You also
what
know what they know, and can they contribute to that? Now it's part of the process?
the other people involved in the process. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
It's like that
manufacturing.
holistic process really feels like it's the right way for me to do, this kind of design thing, and just doing it as a skill in a really large place, it didn't work for me. Okay, last one.
Yeah, good answer. Put me on the spot.
Well, I think we're out of time, so how about just that, what's your takeaway or that you want to share?
Are we out of time, or do we have what? 1 minute.
Yes.
Okay, so
That would be that.
all right, I only get to answer one question. All right, so sort of the small do. We're thinking about this a little bit. I did sort of come from, coming into Heath, I came from working with a lot of technology and these ideas of create something brand new and change the world and a new idea that nobody's ever seen before. And it didn't really work for me. It was like a little bit of a why, and it's still a little bit of a why for me. And I think that what I really came to realize, and as part of what I do today, is that right now we make plates. And it's funny because I give tours for engineering students all the time. I'm like, we make plates. Plates have been around for thousands of years. They're round. There's nothing new about it. But I think that what's important in what we do, and that other people start to realize too, is there's nothing wrong with doing something really simple, but doing it well. Because that whole idea of doing it well, I think, has gotten really forgotten, and is now starting to come back. So that's my thing. Take something simple, do it well, and the world needs that, I think.
It's a good one.
So what's yours?
Okay, so mine is just, mine is maybe simpler, but I think that for me, and what maybe it can work for other people, is I like to think about what I would like my day to be like at a certain point in the future. So instead of thinking, I want to get this in my resume, I really want to accomplish this thing, it's like these kind of disjointed things. I think about
I want to make this much money, or my company be this big.
Yeah, no, I don't
Right.
ever actually think about that. But
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's instead of that.
instead of that, you think about the day, right? Well, who do you want? Where do you want to be sitting? What will it feel like? Where will it be? Is it? That happened. When we felt like, getting off topic, but we're able to spend time in San Francisco now, which feels really good. I wanted to do that. I wanted to be able to have a place there, a studio there, and surround yourself. But thinking about, okay, where do you want to be? Who do you want to surround yourself to be? And what do you want your day to be like? Because I think it can really guide you. A lot of people think I want to have this job title or something, and then you get there, but you didn't want to sit in that desk all day or look at the screen or whatever it is that entails for you to do, that work.
Mm.
So that's that.
That's good. Okay.
Great. Thank
So
you all.
what-